Welcome, everybody. Good morning, good afternoon, depending on where you're located. Welcome to another of our Rallyware webinar series. So this month, we're back and focusing on the direct selling industry, and I am pleased to let you know I have with you our Vice President of Sales from Rallyware, Dan O'Mara. Dan, thanks for being with us today. Dan, thanks for being
Rich.
with us today.
I appreciate it. Went to camera versus microphone.
So, my name is Rich Schupgegel, and I lead up the business development arm at Rallyware, and we are very, very happy to have you with us today. So, as you see from the title slide, we are all about igniting distributor intake. Dan and I were chuckling at that word intake. It sounds like we were admitting people to the hospital. So if you think about that, take good care of those patients. We'll figure out what's wrong with them, and we'll give you some ways to get them healthier. But what we're going to focus on today is how you, at the very beginning, right, lock in that commitment. We have people excited. They signed up for your company. What do? How do we keep them on board? How do we make them successful moving forward? And then really that window that we're taking a look at from day one is through that 90-day mark. And we'll talk a little bit more about how we're going to continue to develop this theme or this thread as we move forward. So that's what we're talking about today, and we're focusing on that first from day one sign up all the way through that 90-day mark. So here's our problem, Dan. Churn.
Yeah, it's a big one we all face, right? Churn is it's been a problem since day one. And so go ahead.
We are not going to be focusing on sales. We're not going to be talking about recruiting. We're not going to be talking about parties, right? We are going to be focusing on this one KPI, this one metric that we know all across direct selling is an issue. So that first bullet point there, we went and tried to find an average, right? Some people say 90+%. Some people say 55%. So we're giving you a range. 50 to 90% of new distributors will be leaving in the first year.
Absolutely. And of course,
go ahead.
Yeah, no. And with that, of course, the trickle down effect, right? We move into, distributor churn is customer churn, and churn in general is billions in lost revenue for us as an organization and as an industry as a whole.
So that's the other piece. So we've got a couple of problems here as we're talking about retention today. One is, how do we measure it, right? So each and every company measures it a bit differently. And that's just to give you sort of a setting today. What we're sharing with you today is not so much industry. It is our dozens and dozens of direct selling clients and what we've aggregated across those clients. And just some of those insights we've shared, we are going to share with you from real life experience from our customers and our company. So we went to them and we actually asked them how they measured retention, right? And just like that data point we talked about, how many people leave in that first year, here again, it varies on how they measure it. And I think one of the biggest variance in that measurement has to do with their comp plan, right? When do we call them active? When do we call them inactive? When did they drop off and become a customer again? And that kind of thing. But as Dan said, we know that no matter how quickly they come through the door, the quicker they go out the door, that's losing us money, not only in that individual distributor, but then as you see here in that third bullet point, it's those customers who lose contact with the company because of that also. All right. So we define the problem. Remember, this is intake in the hospital. That's our diagnosis as you come into the ER. What can we do to improve that?
And Rich, I think something you called out at the beginning, I think we kind of really need to call it out here again, is that we're talking about optimizing this first 48 hours, first 90 days. But this is kind of the Rallyware approach and the aggregate view of our customers' approach. Again, industry-wide, every organization is going to have their own way. They're going to have their own thought processes on it. So all we're trying to do is kind of aggregate and share some of the best practices for today. But real quickly, a little housekeeping. Questions and answers, please feel free to use the question and answer down in the bottom of the Zoom. Throw questions our way. We'll have a time at the end to answer any of those questions.
Thanks, Dan. So as you look at this, as we talked about the problem on the previous slide, talking about how we can solve that, or at least how we can improve upon that. So the first 3 bullet points that you see here are an average across Rallyware direct selling customers and the effect that we've been able to make with some of the methods that we're going to talk about today, right? So here, as an average, improving retention by 82%, increasing sales by over 200%. And remember, this is an average now, so you've got outliers that are in both directions on that, and then increasing orders 156%. So those are actual statistics from our customers in the first 90 days. So that's what we're talking about today. The methodology that Dan and I are going to be tossing back and forth, these are the results on average across our entire customer base.
Yeah, and I just want to make sure that we do highlight the fact that these are from organizations that have this very structured, this very important, and emphasize first 48 or first 90, and as we get into it, even longer than that. But again, something very important to focus on is as we go through this, hopefully there's some insights you can take back to your organization to really kind of focus on these first 48 hours, these first 90 days, and then ultimately longer than that as well. So.
Yeah, in a lot of places, you'll see people talking about that first 72 hours. The tighter you can compress that first touch with somebody who's excited about your company, the more effective you're going to be and the more likely they are to stay engaged. And then we put the 90-day mark out there because a lot of our folks have, fast start, quick start, early success programs, and you see common metrics there across the first 30 days, the first 60 days, and the first 90 days. So that's what we're talking about. The problem we're going to look at today is churn. The solution will get you these kind of results in the business itself. So they always say things are easier to remember and memorize if you group them in 3s, right? So that's what we're going to try to do in a couple places with you today. So if you look at this today, how do we affect that sign up to 90 days? Well, it's 3 things that we want you to remember: simplicity, personalization, and digitalization. You notice how I have to enunciate that? But, that first one there, Dan and I have, with a lot of our new conversations we've been having with people, talked about simplicity being a strategy.
Well, Rich, I think as we've talked about this quite often, simplicity really has to be, especially with, the amount of information that's flowing around, just the information people are bogged down with in their day-to-day lives, right? And then our, competitors in the gig economy in general, everyone is trying to move to that simplistic approach of, reducing that cognitive load or the mental capacity or the thought process, whatever it is, to earn that dollar. And so, I think simplicity is a very important way that kind of helps us set the stage and the reasoning why personalization and digitalization really is so important.
You're right, Dan, on that simplicity. So if we think about it, we've got brand new distributors out there who are coming on board. They have life to start with. They may have another job. They may, as the statistics are telling us, have another gig opportunity that they're engaged in, right? Because 66, 67% last we looked, Dan, right, on people who are engaged in multiple gigs. So think about it. You are lucky if they will give you a couple hours out of their week to focus on your business. So that's, that number one, that might be number one. That might be why it's listed first, right? Is how can you make it easy to sign up? How can you make it easy to do their business? How can you make it easy for them to be successful?
Well, and I think that ties directly into personalization, because as soon as we start talking about simplicity, what makes things simplicity? And that's, narrowing down and only showing what is important to me, right? And is that, hey, look, I set a financial goal for myself. So maybe it's a smaller goal than maybe somebody else. And so do I need as much interaction and touch points, or maybe I have a different pathway for my first 90 days than somebody else. But again, that personalization is, when I get an activity or I get something that the system would like me to do, is it relevant to me? Does it have the needed context to explain to me why I'm actually getting it? And all of that ties into play to really reduce that mental capacity needing. I don't have to sit there and say, well, why am I getting this? Or, hey, look, there's a really cool graph, but what am I supposed to do with this, right? Like, how am I supposed to break this apart and then identify from this graph what I'm supposed to do? When we get into this personalization, we really need to make sure that we are, informing those, distributors that, what specifically we want them or what the organization would like them to do. But it does have to have that context. It does have to have that meaning behind it so that it is much more personalized.
Well, and I will say, so what I hear you saying, right, is it's not a one size fits all approach, because it may be where I'm at in my life, what I want out of my business, just all kinds of things. So if I'm going to go back to the hospital analogy, you and I both come to the emergency room, right? You've just run over your foot with a lawnmower. I've just gotten stung by a bee. They're not going to apply the same assistance to us as we walk through that door. So the same thing with your systems, right? How can we help someone be successful no matter who they are and what they want out of their business? So I'm going to talk a little bit, Dan, you talked about the gig economy. I think that fourth bullet point there, right? People expect high tech today. Make it easy on my phone, sign up, do my business, get my results, follow up, whatever that might be. So here, you'll notice in the bullet points, we've got bolded: simplicity, personalization, and digitization. Digitization, I think I misspelled that. It's got the word app in quotes, right? And we did that for a reason. So Dan, I don't know if you wanted to talk a little bit about, people want an app, right? Their company needs an app. What do they need?
Yeah, no, I think that's a really good point, Rich. I think that every organization is struggling. And maybe struggling, maybe not. We definitely do see some great stories out there, but really meeting that consultant, that distributor, where they are at, in their technology life, right? And does it necessarily need to be an app? Does it just need to be, a mobile web platform? When we start talking with organizations that have large global footprints, we start talking about, well, how good of a device are they utilizing in, maybe a different country? and how much access does that phone have to be able to download content or have to be able to store that application? There's a lot of these things that come into play when we start to look at a global experience around digitalization and how people are going to interact with this technology. So we have to, and as you look at this onboarding experience, these first 48 hours, 90 days, we really have to take a look and say, okay, how can we best meet them where they are at? And then at the same time, how can we provide all of this in a single user experience? Because if we're saying, hey, look, it's hard enough maybe for them to download an application, why are we trying to provide two? And so what we really want to try to do again is really meet them where they're at, understand where they're at. Again, maybe in the States, maybe a little bit different than globally, where technology, we have to meet them again where they are at in their whole experience.
So I think our listeners might find it interesting that, so Rallyware customers, they have the ability to choose browser-based native apps, that type of thing. Some of our largest customers who have hundreds of thousands of representatives across the globe in dozens and dozens of countries still deliver their Rallyware platform, whatever they call it, as that browser-based, even though they can tell from their metrics and analytics that they've got 92%, 95%, 96% doing their business on their phone, this percentage in iOS, this percentage in Android. So it's not necessarily you have to have something from an app store, but it's exactly what Dan said. Whatever device I choose to carry, you've got to be able to do business on that device with them.
Right.
All right. Oh, this is sort of our one-off slide for direct selling, right? So if we were outside of direct selling, talk about onboarding new employees, employee retention, all that kind of thing. This, folks, is direct selling specific. These are our friends and neighbors, the FTC, and I think you've got to keep this in mind always as you are talking about bringing new people into your company.
Yeah, I mean, Rich, I think you're spot on. As we know, as we've all experienced one way or another, this is a very critical piece. And, we can give a lot of different stories about how the Rallyware customers, utilize this, whether it's, hey, look, they have to go through compliance before we can issue them their first check, or maybe we need to have them go through certain steps before we open up different PIN levels and selling opportunities for them. But it is something we have to take into consideration. And again, this single user experience, meeting them where they're at, can we keep it all in one place? And can we use this information to help support the actual business practices that we're in, the business behaviors we are looking to drive?
So as we're talking about keeping your distributors compliant, this doesn't stop at that first 90 days, right? This is an ongoing, it's something we've got to keep interacting with our field about, right? So yes, we can, as they onboard, train them in compliance. As their customers are buying this product or as they're selling that product, we can give them more information about what they should say, can say, can't say about that. But what I found very interesting here, so you see a lot of these things on these 4 screens in front of you on this slide, but it's the very last one. So we try to use all direct selling specific measurements when we're talking in the direct selling industry. This one is not, but I thought it was so fascinating that we should keep it in there. If you notice that this was from some HR tech journal that our marketing and research group put it out, 64% of workers, so even your salespeople, right, trust orders given by robots over managers. So as you think about what your platforms, what your back office, what your experience with your distributors can deliver, they're going to take that automated information response and approach supposedly even better than they would from their upline, their coach, their mentor, whoever they may be interacting with in the business.
Yeah, I think that's a very important part, Rich. And, I think we see that across society in a lot of places. Talk about my grandfather used to love to give directions, but at this point in time, when I take his word for it, or when I call up and Siri and ask her to take me someplace. So
there you go.
So I think what's important though is that with that builds trust, right? So as we go through this process and we start talking about and kind of continue this conversation around personalization and we need to make sure that we're able to start providing those right activities again to build that trust over time.
You know what, I didn't comment on that when you just said personalization, even with your compliance, right? Training. So yes, you may give training that is generic when they first come on board, what they can say, what they can't say, claims, that kind of thing. But here again, that same kind of personalization, depending on what I sell, depending on what my customers buy, that can be specific to me, to that product, and what I am allowed to make claims or not make claims about. So even in this compliance training or compliance overview, right? Simplify, personalize, digitalize. So those same three things come into effect there. So here we go. Talked about three things, right? Simplify, personalize, digitize. There's three more for you here. We've got 3 R's as you are thinking about how we can make this work with those new people coming on board, right? Make it, and you've heard a lot of these things in what Dan's been talking about in that relevance, right? So is it relevant to them, right? To where they're at, to what they want, to what they are doing in their business today.
Rich, I'm going to jump in real quick. It's one of my favorite topics. Is that it's the relevancy is absolutely critical. Soon as our field starts thinking, oh, okay, this. I go to this thing, it's not relevant to me. They lose interest, and we're going to lose them in this process. And so to keep that, to drive results and retention, we'll get to that in a second. That relevancy is absolutely critical. So how do you make it relevant, right? So one is that we have to start getting information from our field. What's important to them? What are their goals? Where would they like to go? What would they like to do? And then we have to use that information at an individual level to make sure that that content is relevant. And I know, Rich, you might jump in on this topic, but is that when we start having that information from a personal level and we start matching that with their actual performance, then that starts to become very, very relevant. For example, if I say, hey, look, I want to earn $250 a month, and I hit my $250. Hey, I get a congratulatory message, and maybe I get a challenge that says, hey, maybe you can do another $30 more, because that's now super relevant to me. One, I'm congratulated, and two is I'm challenged to do maybe a little bit more because I'm already there. But that content is relevant. Very, 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 very relevant to me, and it's impactful to me at that time. So I just think that, when we talk about make sure your technology can automate relevant content, but the question in a lot of cases is, how do we know that it's relevant?
All right, the second R, results. I'm going to go back to the old Drucker quote, right? If you can't measure it, you can't improve it. So not only are we measuring for results for those individual distributors, but what you are doing at corporate trying to make a difference in the business. This is not you implement it, it works. This is a very iterative approach, not only as you see how it affects the field, but as your business continues to evolve over the years, those changes need to be made and measured and iterate off of that. So that's a lot about what we're talking about here. So Dan says, is it relevant? Can we measure it so we can prove that we're actually having an effect? And then that all comes into, keeping them engaged, keeping them around and retained. So the thing I forgot to mention, the thing Dan hates in this slide, if you look at the 3 R's for that 90-day, so we're going to talk to you a little bit on our very, very last slide about what happens after 90 days, right? And so we're trying to come up with a term. We're trying to coin a term for what do we call that beyond that fast start, beyond that quick start program, right? Is it extended onboarding? Is it long onboarding? I personally like the term longboarding, right? I thought Dan and I should have our surfer dude shirts on when we're talking about that. So if any of you have a good term or title for what we should start calling beyond that fast start program, we would love to hear it from you either in the Q&A now in the chat or afterwards as a follow-up, because you're going to hear from us a little bit as we get to the last slide. Yes, we're focused today up to 90, but what do we need to measure after 90?
Yeah.
So,
Rich, will you go back? Sorry.
Sure. No
I
problem.
just want to kind of touch on something here. I know you mentioned results and make sure a distributor can visualize their progress, but I want to pull back to simplicity. This is one of the things that we're finding is really absolutely critical in that first 48 or first 90 days, actually, is the fact that we need to be able to get into a position where we are only presenting relevant information. Because a lot of times what we're finding out is that when people are looking at empty dashboards or they're looking at progress bars or progress of any sort, and it's set at 0, or these graphs have very minimal data, it really actually provides a negative experience for that individual. So when we get to simplicity and relevance, we need to make sure that those tie into the results as well, so that each of our consultants are only presented with the necessary data that's important to them at that point in time, so that they're not getting bogged down or they're not getting negative feelings around the fact of empty data or low progress in things that are not even relevant to them.
So here's where we need to clarify, because what Dan is saying as he's describing what they're seeing, dashboards, that kind of thing. So here's the difference. A lot of distributors today have a wonderful back office. They log into, they look at all kinds of information. They still have to figure out what to do. That is the reactive environment of yesteryear. What we are trying to tell you, you need to take those distributors to the proactive. Tap them on the shoulder, tell them, as Dan said, you're at $250 this month. If you go to $280, you're going to get this, or this will happen over the next 12 months. You had these 2 customers who just bought this product. You need to follow up with them about this complementary product. And don't forget, you can't say certain things about this product. So here again, as you hear us talking about delivering that information, it's proactive instead of me having to go into something and figure it out in a reactive way.
Yes, thanks, Rich. Great.
All right, now let's try to the best practices for this up to 90 days that we're talking about. And a lot of these here, we're saying best practices because this is what we do with our clients at Rallyware, and this is how we got those 3 bullet points of results that you saw in the very beginning, right? So make a map of the first 30 to 90 days. What are we talking about, Dan, with making a map?
Well, I think it's a really important piece is that what do we want that journey to look like? And this is where this is where a lot of confusion can come in regards to like how detailed do we get, you know, how reactive should we make this type of thing, stuff like that. But let's just start with just a basic map that says like, hey, what are your goals? And, you know, good, better, best, you know, and from that standpoint, provide the necessary journey for them just based off of maybe 1, 2, or even 3 scenarios, but make those map, those maybe, if not daily, weekly activities that we want them to do in that period of time.
So we have many of our customers who are, you know, sitting down internally or working with their field, creating those personas, right? What type of people might be interested in coming into our business? And then depending on that type, right? You may have a different pathway that you're taking someone down. So here again, I want you to think about this in 3s. So you've got the ability at corporate to prescribe those pathways, right? For the different people who might come into the business. You might give me, that brand new distributor walking in the door, the ability to choose my path. But thirdly, even more importantly, your technology through that machine learning, through that smart technology should be able to even optimize what you at corporate think is best, what I as a new person coming in the door think that I want out of my business. What does that data tell you that can help me be successful even more down that personalized path to success?
Absolutely. Mm-hmm.
All right. Where should a distributor be at 30/90? Measure, measure, measure. And then work with your team. As Dan said, you're going to start by crafting this journey, right? It's not going to be perfect the first time you roll it out. Take a look at what's happening, take a look at the results, take a look at the data, and iterate. And I love this 4th point, right? We sometimes forget when we're sitting inside a corporate, we don't always know best. Include your field in how you help them, if you will.
You know, and I think kind of going back to timely really is that solicit distributor feedback, but what we try to emphasize is trying to do it in a timely manner as it would be related to the information that you want to get back. So, you know, if there's certain activities that they're doing or certain things, is there a way that we can see that the fact that they did those actions and to ask that information, you know, as close to that as possible so that we can get maybe the rawest type of feedback back. So just one thing I think there is that over the years, we've really kind of worked and learned to try to get it as close to that as possible to get the best type of feedback.
And here again, I think, you know, point number 5, we're going to keep beating this and beating this and beating this as we talk about simplicity as a strategy. We really, you know, that's where we've got to be if we're going to compete out there, not only with one another, but as Dan said before, with all the gig opportunities people have sitting in front of them today. All right, so this is it. This is summarizing some of the things you've heard, hopefully in a concise format, right? First 48 is the key. Our first set of 3 for you to memorize: simplify, personalize, digitalize, right? So that you can get those pieces in place the way they should be. Enablement platform. So that's what we call Rallyware, a field enablement platform. Here, it will deliver those 3 R's, your relevance, your results, and your retention. And you've got to know, what do you want? What are you setting as a metric? What are you setting as a KPI? What are we measuring against there? And then you're going to help us with the name of this Beyond 90, because that is where we're going. Well, go ahead, Dan.
Sorry, Rich, go back. I know we're a little bit checking on time here, but I think that you know, there's a point number 2 there that is something we've kind of really haven't really touched on that much so far is this trust and tone. Is that one of the things that this onboarding this first 48, this onboarding period is really, I guess, helps you to cement in this case is that trust and tone. Kind of going back to saying, hey, look, like, oh, you should do this right now. I do it, and the majority of people get a positive result. That builds trust. And then, of course, the tone here is saying, hey, look, trust in us as a company because we're going to support you the best possible way that's available. We're going to meet you where you're at in your digital experience, and we're going to help you reach your goals. And oh, wait, if your goals change, don't worry, we're going to be there for that as well. And I think that is one key thing that you can kind of see it throughout the presentation. We haven't really talked about it that much. So I just wanted to make sure we touched on that.
No, I appreciate that. That's very, very important. All right. So here, up to this point, we've been talking up to 90 days. We've been sharing with you what we've seen aggregated across our customers. Our analytics team is starting to take a look at, you don't just forget about somebody at the 90-day mark. It doesn't mean they're going to stay with you forever, right? So what does that 90-day and beyond look like? So that's what we're starting to take a deep dive internally across data points, right? What happens in that 90, and it may turn out to be 90 to 180, might turn out to be, who knows? I don't know where it's going to go, but what does that continuous engagement need to look like? What are some of those common threads we see? So remember, I shared with you 3 performance results in one of those very first slides, and that was an average. So here, right now, we haven't put that data together to be able to give you averages across our client base. I actually pulled some of the, outliers, some of the better performance results, but one of our customers that's an apparel company, right? During that 90, so they are specifically measuring all the way up to that 12-month point, right? Increased their average sales by 408%. How did they do that? And we'll come back to you at that point. A skincare company, number of orders, 743%. And then a company that they are taking a look, as they should, for every dollar invested in their field enablement platform, what are the results they're seeing? So these are just some of the pieces of the puzzle that we're going to continue to look at as we move forward, and we will get to a point where we share those results also, and hopefully some insights. We see a lot about fast start and onboarding programs in direct selling literature. You don't see that much specifically targeted after that, other than incentives program and how do we drive behavior and that kind of thing.
I think, Rich, because once you get past that 90 days, you start getting into different things, right? Like team management and, new product introductions and new product launches. Growing
leaders, right? And
yeah, exactly.
That may be a big part of it, right?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think that, this warrants, a much bigger conversation, and I'm excited that we're going to dive into this here in a little while, I think. So pretty excited.
All right. So a lot of times, this is where we end. We go to Q&A directly. We did include a slide here. This is a commercial about Rallyware. Well, because everything we talked about today was over our client base, right? So this is what we're talking about, what we strive for, right? With that field enablement platform, using that data, using the analytics, using all those things you've heard Dan sharing today, as we try to drive that behavior by personalizing that path to success for each and every one of your distributors. All right, enough of a commercial announcement.
All right. Okay.
Let's go to Q&A.
All right.
Dan, I let you monitor that. Do we have anybody who's talking out there?
Yeah, so we've got some, and I've answered some people throughout the process here.
Oh, good,
Privately,
good.
but there were some questions that came up that I think are relevant. One of them is, how much work does it take to personalize?
Yeah, that's true. Do I have, if I have 100,000 distributors, do I have to have 100,000 paths?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, we take a look at some organizations may have a footprint of 1 million, 2 million people in, 60, 70 different countries. Personalization is really interesting is that, one of the things that when we talk about personalization is that we try to keep it simple, right? Simple at first, because it is new. You can do 1% of personalization and it can seem like massive because it is new. There's not a lot of personalized stuff going on out there. And so, but one of the things that we talked about originally was that, maybe personalized introductory paths. Okay. And then maybe as far as, having a personalized set of activities when you get somebody new on your team, but it only has to be 2 or 3. So again, there's not a lot of work that goes into personalization. What really is kind of, I think, more important, Rich, and I think this is one of the things that we talked about a little bit ago, actually right before this call, and is around the measurements. What do we personalize? Well, we personalize towards the behaviors or the KPIs that we're looking to drive. So I don't know if you want to jump in on that part of it.
Yeah, I just think an easy way to explain how it is not that daunting a task, right? Is if you think about when your technology can recognize one data point and we can automate a rule off of that, right? So think about my enrollment date. What do you want to automatically happen at the 7-day mark, at the 14-day mark, at the 30-day mark? So that's just over time. How about some of my business accomplishments? What do you want to automatically happen when I make my first sale, or automatically happen when I made my first $100 of commission, or when I brought somebody in, or when I sold this product? So think about it. All you have to have is a piece of data that the computer can look at, and we automate that rule off of it to have that happen automatically. So and that's why it's such an iterative approach, because you're going to find things that work well, and you're going, well, if we did that for 7 days and 14 days and 30 days, we should be doing that for. So here again, I think that's a simple way, the old first grade teacher in me, Dan, that's a simple way to explain, right? The computer very easily can look at any marker in there, a date, an amount, personal volume, team volume, 1 recruit, 5 recruits, whatever that might be. And you can have things happen automatically to help those distributors out there.
Excellent, Rich. I think we're coming up to our 45-minute mark. So
we are. Any other questions you want to put out for the group?
I don't. I see some here. Does Rallyware white label platform, or does it come with Rallyware brand? It can, of course, be white labeled. And hit whatever customer branding or thought process you want. But we'll answer some of these questions
individually.
The last thing I would say is that don't make this bigger than what it has to be. For closing thought on my end, don't make it bigger than what it has to be. Choose one specific thing. Like literally, we had a customer that came in and said, "Hey, look, all I want to do is personalize activity towards reducing time to second purchase." That was the only thing they were concerned about. And again, start with something very simple. I want to provide 2 different pathways for my field. One maybe is a customer approach, one may be a business builder approach, but try to keep it as simple as possible to start, and then learn from that and iterate, like you said, Rich.
You know what? You're right. We probably made this sound very daunting and confusing. So our customer success group, which is the essence of Rallyware, right? They're good about this. What's that minimum viable product we want to get out the door today? knowing that in a week or knowing that in a month, we can do the next thing and the next thing and the next thing. You're right. All right. So just as a follow-up logistically, everybody who has been on this today will receive a copy of this recording and follow up at some point in time. And don't hesitate to circle back to us. You see here, sales@rallyware.com. You can also send to Dan@rallyware.com and Rich@rallyware.com. And we promise you will hear back from us. Dan, anything else?
No, sir. That's it. Thank everyone for your time.
Thanks, everybody. Have a great one. And we will let you know when we have the next Rallyware webinar series ready to launch. Take care now.
Take care.